Welcome to a special episode of What We're Talking About. We've been preparing for this one for a while now, and as of today, this is the 1-year anniversary of the loss of Kobe Bean Bryant. If you're not aware, on January 26, 2020, Kobe and 7 others, including his daughter Gianna Bryant, were en route to a basketball game at the Mamba Sports Academy, now called the Sports Academy, in Thousand Oaks, California, where tragically their lives, along with 6 others, were tragically cut short. Kobe at the time was 41 years old and Gianna was 13 years old. So I wanted to kind of just have one episode where we just talked about it, acknowledged how we felt, where we were, at the same time not dwell on what happened, but more just the good times with Kobe Bryant. So the only thing I got done, guys, this year was I obviously I'm not going to get a tattoo, but I didn't get like a jersey or anything crazy because to me personally, he's gone, so it doesn't matter. But I did get my license plate changed to Bean 82 in honor of my favorite version of Kobe, which was the 8 jersey, and of course his daughter, which was number 2. Dre is our guest today, our basketball aficionado. And Andre, first of all, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And of course, you have my partner there, Aaron T. Montgomery. Is there a special thing the T stands for today, Aaron?
No, we're all serious, all business today,
Good
Donnie.
deal. Good deal. So, Dre, where were you when this happened? When the accident took place, when you were really truly aware that what had happened? Where were you? What was the situation? How did you feel? Give us that story.
Yeah, it's I think all of us with this moment, this event, kind of remember where we were. I remember it was a Sunday morning. I'm upstairs, first thing in the morning, watching ESPN, which I like to do. And after a few minutes, a friend of mine, he sent me a text, and it had a link, TMZ, and it says Kobe Bryant in a helicopter crash. Now, we know how TMZ used to be, right? Used to be, you don't trust it until it's on something else, until another news outlet reports on it. But over the last few years, TMZ has been very reliable. So I said, you know what? It was kind of startling, but I said, this can't be true. So I waited a little bit. Then I turned another ESPN channel, and they're not talking about it. So I'm like, this can't be true. Waited a little bit longer. I think I went to the New York, it was either Daily News or New York Post. I think it was Daily News. Maybe it was USA Today. And then just a little short couple of sentences, Kobe Bryant in a helicopter crash. Gave a couple other little sentences, but that was it. Waited a little bit longer, and then like everybody, it started popping up on every news outlet. And guys, we've talked about this, Donnie, I know before, when celebrities die or athletes die, singers, because we don't have that connection. It's like, wow, we remember from our childhood, but you don't feel that personal loss. But I have to tell you, after about an hour of hearing these different reports, I actually said to myself, please don't be true. And I've never, ever said that with anybody that I don't know. I couldn't believe it. And then as the day went on and you're hearing more, and then you think, oh, well, the whole family, was everybody on the helicopter? And then you find out, Gianna's on it. It's still, even today, I still haven't fully just appreciated the fact or come to the realization that he's not here right now. Because we've never had a basketball legend die so young.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you say that, and I mean, for those who don't grasp what Andre means, Bill Russell still here. Besides maybe Wilt Chamberlain and a few others, your Jerry West, all these people are still around. Oscar Robertson, they're still here. We've seen them grow old. Dr. J, yet Kobe's gone, young, and really taken off to the best part of his life, where he seemed to be opening up. Was a recluse for a long time, but was opening up and interviewing. That 6-month period before he passed, I mean, he's on interview after interview after interview where he's so positive about life in general. So, and we'll come back around to that. But what about you, Aaron? Where were you? Circumstances? How'd you feel?
I was at home like most on a Sunday, just waking up. I got a text message from somebody I know out in California, and the text message just said, "Did you hear about Kobe?" And immediately I'm like, oh man, don't let it be bad news. But when you get that kind of text, you kind of expect bad news. So I Googled. I don't know what site said something about it. It might have been TMZ, but it was like Kobe in a helicopter crash, and immediately the first thought that goes through my head is, oh my goodness, please don't let his daughter have been with him. And that was my first thought, because especially after retirement, it seems like every time you saw him, well, only time we would really see him was at the basketball game, since we're not friends or anything like that. So you see him at the game and his daughter's right next to him. You see him do, after a game talking to a player, daughter's right next to him. Like, she obviously was daddy's little girl with her daddy all the time. So that's the first thought that went through my head. The second, honestly, was I got to call Donnie. And this is because, growing up with you, knowing the love that you had for him as a player and as a person, it was, in my life, you were his biggest fan. So that was the second thought to my head. I think I texted you. I might have called. I can't remember, but I know I didn't get a response. I don't. It might have been you at your meeting or something. I don't know what else was going on. And so then once I saw that, people were saying that he had died already. I think I did a text for the group text that we on. Yeah. And not too long later is when I saw the first article saying that his daughter was with him, and it was just a crushing thought to have happen. And like Andre said, or Donnie, you were both kind of saying it, it's one of the biggest celebrity deaths ever in our lifetime. Yeah. We've had, just off the top of my head, to anything close to it would be like Prince dying, Michael Jackson dying, and this is right there with those two. Like, those are worldwide icons, and Kobe was that by the for a number of years, but definitely by the end of his life. So it was definitely a hard hitting blow, more so than any other famous death.
And I think you mentioned what it was comparable to. The only one I could ever compare it to, now the ones that I felt this way for, was always, for a long time, it was Aaliyah. I felt like she was kind of robbed because of 9/11. Yeah. She died a month before that, so it kind of got lost in the news cycle. But she's remembered now. And then Paul Walker, for me, as far as people that I enjoyed watching their craft, but Paul Walker didn't even register like this, or even Aaliyah. I think Princess Die was something I definitely watched over and over and over again when she passed away, because it was so tragic and so unnecessary. But this one, the reason you couldn't reach me. The irony of this is what I think kills me, and has killed me all year. We were going on vacation. COVID was just a thing I'd heard my wife say, and I was like, she called it coronavirus at the time. And I'm like, no one's going to ever call a real disease coronavirus. I mean, that's the name of a brand. They can't do that. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I remember saying that. We were supposed to be going to Cancun. And at the time, there was the State Department had said, hey, don't go to Mexico. Basically, there's all these issues going on. So we were like, you know what? We're not going to go to Cancun. I had just canceled that and booked a trip to Dana Point in California, which is like around the same areas as where Kobe lives, maybe 30, 40 miles from where he lives. So I had been there before. I wanted Shelly to see Newport Beach and all these places on the Pacific, go whale watching, all that stuff. We fly out there. Our flight took off at, what would that be? 12:30 Eastern from Dulles. He crashed at 9:26, so it would have been 12:26, like Coast. 4 minutes in between. He's died. I'm taking off to go to the same place. So when we have a stopover, because nothing goes direct anymore, in Houston, sitting on the tarmac, turn my phone on, and my phone exploded. And the only person, I didn't see you immediately. The first person I saw was Dre. Mm-hmm. And Dre does that thing where, we've done it over the years, Dre, where you'll say like, you'll name a person and we all got to guess like what happened to this person. But this one, you were just like, you were so dramatic. You just kept putting like, this can't be true. Don't let it be true. I can't believe this. Yeah. And I'm, on the internet, on the airplane is kind of spotty. So I'm wait till we get back to the terminal. And we get off. So we're going to ready before we board to the next plane to California. And I see it. And I'm like, how do I react? I wasn't sure how to react on vacation with my wife. And then just around a bunch of people that may think, did you know him? So I kind of like kept it to myself. But when we got back in the air headed to California, I lost it. First half hour on the way there, just cried like a baby. And I felt so stupid because I don't know him. What was it for you, Trey, that let's kind of go back, because that was the part I wanted to get out, kind of cathartic. We've waited a year for this. I've gotten it out on camera, how I felt. That's not everything about Kobe. It's not, he's a very, as Aaron says, polarizing figure. Actually, let me go back to you first, Aaron. Why, to be someone that's considered now to be the closest to Mike, you would have thought everyone loved Kobe the whole time? To give people the backstory on why initially so many did not like Kobe.
It had a lot to do with him trying to emulate Mike, to be honest with you. A lot of the hate that came his way came from that. He was looked at as like a young whippersnapper upstart. Who does he think he is to dare to try to reach the heights of Michael Jordan? That was really the underlying theme to anybody that had some sort of criticism about him, right? Because we had never seen a player like him before, as far as coming from high school into the league. I believe the first guard to make that jump.
That's correct.
And to get the opportunity quickly as well, not just to be in the NBA, but to be in there and to be on a championship caliber team immediately, and to be getting playing time on that team. Like, there are rookies that the Lakers probably drafted that year that did not get as much playing time as Kobe did, or maybe they drafted the year before that did not get as much time as Kobe did once he got there. So all that goes into really jealousy.
Yeah.
And looking upon him as why him? Why not this other person? Like, what has he done to deserve it? That all went into the hate that really stuck with him for a long time, because after, he had success and they won championships, then it was, okay, he think he the best, but he only got it because he was Shaq, or he only got it because he was Phil. Right. Then the hate turned to, well, he was just given a privileged position. That's why he was born to a rich family.
Right.
That type of jealousy towards him. So that stuck around him for a long time.
What about you, Dre?
Yeah, and Aaron touched on a lot of them. I think it's the timing. He came along during the time where we were just starting to see these high school players jump right into the NBA. So he does that. And then, and it's kind of the Steph Curry thing, where there's an underlying issue where people, kind of are, they don't want to give him full credit because he comes from a basketball family or celebrity or athlete family.
Correct.
So it was kind of like, oh, you're not from the street. You're not you didn't have to earn your stripes in order to get to the NBA. But what I really appreciated about him is he didn't care. It was like, I'm going to be great. I'm going to be better than Michael Jordan. I'm going to come in and dominate the league. So as much hatred as people had for him, only because he was that next one, it was like he fought through it. I remember because, my wife and I, Lydia, we were just married. So 98, we moved, or we were living in Carolina, Jordan country, MJ country. And most of my friends, they hated Jordan. They hated Kobe. It was all about MJ. And I'm like, guys, can you not appreciate how good he is at this young age?
You're always that outlier. I love that about you.
I am. I'm always the outlier. I am. Because I always try to look at things without emotion. I try to take the emotion out of it. But I'm like, this kid is going to be great. He's already this good. And he's only 19, 20 years old. So I always respected that. And I kind of wonder what would have been like if most people didn't dedicate all of that time to hating him, to actually appreciating how good he was, because it was later. It was later in his career, after Shaq was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Then he becomes the man for the Lakers. He scores a lot of points. He's scoring champ, blah, blah, blah. But then towards the end, really, when he gets a team, then fans, his fans grow. It felt like more appreciated him than how great he was. And it was like, man, if you would have jumped on board, a lot earlier, you might have appreciated how great he was for a longer period.
I don't think we were allowed to, or I was on it, but even then it wasn't a loud chirp because I knew a lot of people didn't like him. So if you paint that picture back to those 90s, this was 96 he's drafted, right? So that whole college season, which was important back then, college was everything back then. That 96 season, all we're talking about really is AI. Allen Iverson's at Georgetown. He is dominating at Georgetown. He looks great. He's going to be the number one pick. He's going to a storied franchise in Philadelphia. He's the number one pick. And, Kobe doesn't, that's the thing. He's going to go down as one of the greatest, if not top 5 players. For me, he's my 1B to Michael. But in a lot of ways, he's my 1A over Michael in terms of a lot of other things. But he's a 13th pick by the Charlotte Hornets. And yet he gets traded to this great franchise. Jerry West saw something in him, which, who knew? Who could have possibly? Because the only highlights we saw back then, they weren't covering high school games like that. So we saw him dunk on a bunch of, I don't mean to sound rude, but a bunch of scrawny little suburban kids. And I'm like, this dude.
Everybody looked like they were 5'9".
Yeah, no one was his height. No one. And it's like, maybe of him, of all people, if AI couldn't do it, why does he feel like he can? Lo and behold, he did it. But look at the guys that went ahead of him, y'all. AI, Marcus Camby, Sharif Abdul-Rahim. Those are all 3 All-Stars for the most part. Stephon Marbury, Ray Allen, Antoine Walker, Lorenzen Wright, Kerry Kittles, Samaki Walker, Eric Dampier, Todd Fuller. This one's a joke. Vitaly Potapenko, who Stephen A makes fun of all the time. And then Kobe. And to see him come out of that class when NBA was a lot different and to become what he became, I think a lot of it also had to do with AI had that street cred. He had the cornrows, the tats. Kobe comes in looking like me, looking like a Kanye West to the rap game. He's just kind of, I'm here to play basketball. He was awkward. In a lot of ways, would you say, Dre, he kind of mirrored Tiger Woods in the sense that he seemed socially awkward?
Absolutely. Yeah. The more stories you hear about him and at the piece he did,
The Muse or
the award, the
book?
The Muse,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Right, the Muse. I mean, you realize how awkward he was with people. It put him, because of his background, where he grew up, with his family, his dad. You could tell, you could understand now why he was so awkward. He only wanted to focus on basketball. He didn't hang with the guys. Even when he got to the NBA, he wasn't hanging with some of these basketball players. All he knew was playing ball, being the best, practice, being the greatest. And so, just being able to get that insight, I thought, more recently was valuable to me to understand, okay, this is why he was this way on the court.
And Aaron, what do you think was, please go ahead. No, answer that. Go ahead.
I was going to say it also, I was just thinking how the impact he had upon the game of basketball was like, we talked about people hating on him when he first got to the league and early in his career, but his impact came later. Like when you talk about that draft class, AI had an immediate impact upon basketball outside of just basketball. Culturally, he was the one who brought hip hop to the NBA. Even though they were always meshed in some way, he made it. Hip hop walked into the building when he walked into the building. So that's why he got all the looks. He got all the eyes on him, especially for the way he played and his size. So all that was kind of unique. Whereas Kobe, not saying he wasn't unique, being so young coming into the league, he was a 6'6". How tall was he? 6'7"?
6'6".
Yeah.
He was 6'7" guard, which is the typical guard. So it was really nothing that stood out besides him being young at the time. As time went on, not saying AI didn't have a great career. Obviously, he's a Hall of Famer, but Kobe's, I feel like his legacy that he left upon the game couldn't be noticed until later because of the hate first, but because of the way he played the game. Now people talk about the Mamba mentality. Now everybody gets to see, oh my goodness, this guy worked hard. Because like you talked about before, he didn't have the street cred. So he didn't have the look of putting in that work to get to the league. He was the son of a former player. We compare him to AI. AI came from the dirt, literally from the dirt, and worked his way through hate, through jail, through all that to get to the NBA. So more beloved story there. But the legacy that Kobe had, like you said, Andre, I feel bad that we all didn't see it earlier and perhaps enjoy it along the way more.
I think that was on purpose, though, because I think all of us, and again, I'm going to bring up reference Kanye, the idea of we're all self-conscious, right? And you can look back at Kobe's earlier interviews. Remember how much he sounded like Mike? That wasn't his natural cadence, his natural voice. He had just gotten to that bubble like all of us, but he actually got to be the one to do it, right? So he's there. He was never comfortable in his own skin. Imagine being 17 years old, walking into a locker room of all environments. Because I started working when I was 17, but it was at a white collar establishment. It wasn't in a locker room where dudes can be just brutal, especially when you got guys like Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones who are ballers. Like, you're coming for their spot. You're playing their spot. So Phil Jackson didn't make it easy. His first coach, Del Harris, did not make it easy on him. And of course, Shaq didn't make it easy. Aaron, you and I kind of disagree a little bit. I want to hear your point of view. Why do you feel as though, because I say Phil and Shaq made it hard for him, but you have a different way of viewing that.
Well, there's a history to the NBA. There's a history to the way things go in the NBA. So here, you got the first guard to come out of high school directly to the league, and the GM handpicked him basically. He went and saw him and said, "That's the guy I'm going to get." He makes a trade to get that guy. Then later he makes a trade to make sure that guy plays. So he's doing all this. He is molding things to get this kid to play because he sees greatness in him. And then you have a great player in Shaq. You have a great coach in Phil that are like, hold, that ain't the way things go. He got to earn his dues. Phil, why am I going to play this kid when I have veterans who I know can get things done? Why should I take a chance on this kid who I'm not sure? I haven't seen him play. I haven't seen him go through a college year. I haven't seen him go through March Madness. He came in with nothing but the expectations of a legend in Jerry West that saw the greatness. So I see that's a hard thing for men who have put in years doing things a certain way to change. It just is. And then to come with the brashness that Kobe had does not help.
No,
if you are seemingly bucking the system, people think you're trying to buck the system, or people are trying to put you in a position you don't deserve, but then you're playing into that. You're coming in with that attitude like, I should be playing. I'm better than him.
Right.
Like, it's this, that, something. Like, he came with that. So, I understand the veteran mentality of Phil and Shaq. So that's why I don't say they were being harder on him. I just think they were doing what is usually done.
What about you, Dre?
Yeah, and that definitely makes sense. Typically in the NBA, it's always been, the young guy who comes in, he's got to kind of kowtow to what everybody, what the players ask of him. Kind of take a back seat, be respectful, be humble, act like they're learning from you, and sometimes they're just way more talented than you. But, just the humble approach. From what I've read, Kobe's like, nah, I'm not trying to hear any of that. In the practice, he's pushing these veterans.
Right.
He's dunking on these veterans and like, what? Or with Shaq, it's like, no, you can't be lazy. What are you being lazy? We need to play. And so I could see how if it's pushing away some fans that don't care for him, imagine the effect it's having with his own teammates. And of course, with Phil Jackson, with Shaq, these guys that have been established. So yeah, did he bring some of this on
a little bit
because of his personality? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think just to move on in time a little bit, I think you have to be that way if you're coming out of high school to be that good and that bold. You better be kind of a little different. And he was. And again, I think we're painting the picture now going, well, LeBron came in, it was all given to him. That's because of people like Kevin Garnett, Moses Malone, Kobe Bryant, who laid that foundation to make it easy for a franchise to go, here, young guy, go do it. And of course, there's a lot of people we won't even name that failed at that. So it's very few that are able to pull it off at any position. You move forward in time. Kobe's gone. Not Kobe, excuse me. Shaq's gone. The Lakers struggle. There's people like, as Andre's always told me, you cannot win championships with people named Smush on your team. Smush Parker.
Any nickname that starts if you have a nickname that starts or precedes your last name, you're not going to win. And that's your guard? Speedy Claxton.
Speedy.
Muggsy Bogues. You name it. You know. Smush Parker.
Yes.
How's your nickname onomatopoeia? Who come up with that?
All I know is every time they ask about Kobe, that's one of the few people he ripped publicly and apparently behind the scenes. Every book I read about Kobe, yeah, he wasn't feeling. And a lot of it with Kobe was just outwork me. Or not even outwork me, work as hard as I'm working. If you do that, like Powell, him and Powell got along because Powell was a thinker, but he also worked hard. He got along with guys like Matt Barnes because he worked hard and wasn't afraid of Kobe. Whereas he struggled with a guy like Jeremy Lin, who kind of, backed down from Kobe. And a guy like Kobe, you just can't be like that. So to kind of round out who he was, we saw him go from a reclusive, kind of just an aloof kind of young guy who's kind of a jerk to a winner that we still, the majority were like, eh. During all this time in the background, LA loved him. LA loved Kobe the whole time.
Right.
And then you get to this point where he's on a team with Powell and he wins without Shaq. And then suddenly everyone seems to like Kobe. He's the guy that we now go, God, I wish he was, I wish LeBron was like Kobe. Which was a strange thing to happen. Then he retires, puts out 60 on his way out. What was it about him, Dre? And we've had this conversation. I want to kind of round out on the positive. What was it about the last year of his life that you enjoyed watching from afar?
Right. I think it was because he allowed his guard to be dropped. He took away that, that curtain or that
scowl.
I don't know, that mask that he wore.
Yeah.
And he showed this is it. And whether it was always there or as he got older and matured more, it kind of morphed into that. But now he was more accessible. Mm-hmm. Now he was more nurturing, whether it was teammates or some of the young guys that were coming up. Like they talk about his relationship with Kyrie. Mm-hmm. And you're hearing all of these connections he's had with Tatum,
Crazy.
and Lillard and all of these guys. I think, and I think it kind of goes back to that topic we discussed with MJ. In order for you to be the greatest, it's almost like you can't juggle being a great guy, great teammate, great family member, or family leader, a parent, what have you, and be that great killer.
Right.
I think that's kind of the question. We know how MJ was, but we see how MJ is now. He's the old bitter guy,
yeah, he is.
Kind of now.
A little bit.
With Kobe, it's almost like he covered up a lot of that, perhaps, if that was his personality, and he sacrificed it, put on the back burner in order to be the great player he was. But that it seems like towards the end, he opened up. You kind of saw then what he likes, what makes him tick, what interests he has outside of basketball.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is how much he loved his girls. It was like, wow, he's a family guy. I think people can relate to that. Mm-hmm. And that's why all of a sudden, this guy that we kept knocking down, saying he's not as good as Jordan, he's a wannabe, we discredited. Now we're like, oh, he's a winner. He's a winner. Because now we can kind of see who he truly is. And the effect he had on so many people, not just in the basketball world, but outside of the basketball world. So, yeah.
The word, I feel like the word that honestly encapsulate what you mean, Andre, is legacy.
Mm.
He
Right.
left a lasting legacy. So like
Right.
early he couldn't show any weakness
Right.
to get to the level that he wanted to get to. After he was done with basketball, now he can be vulnerable. He can show that other side. He can show that, more approachable side of himself in a way that Mike hasn't really got to.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps because of the love that he's got, or the international love that he had his whole life. I don't know, but he never made that transition because Mike's transition was to now he wants to run a team and win a championship. So that same competitiveness he had on the court, now he's still using it from a president or owner standpoint. Kobe, I don't think Kobe ever would have went that way. Maybe a owner, but not in the same vein that Mike was. I felt like he was so much. Like you said, he loved his girls, and that would have led him to do a lot more for women's basketball, and that would have been his ongoing legacy. But I was thinking about this today. Overall, it's funny how he developed this legacy, the Mamba mentality, for himself and for his family, because that same hate to love happened for Vanessa. Because early on with being young and married and all that, and from the outside you hear about him falling out with his family. So the outside looking in is like, oh, it's because they're trying to protect him from this young girl that he's fallen in love with and married. The thoughts of her being a gold digger and all that comes into play, especially with a young athlete who has money. So she was painted in a way that I don't think was necessarily fair. She was young. She might have did some dumb things, but she was young, just like Kobe was. She was very young. So I think she showed her legacy started with the unfortunate incident in Utah, because when that happened, if she was everything that people had said she was, she's out. She walks away, she takes half of what he got, and she leaves. And that would have been it for her. She would have been like, all right, we knew that about her. That ain't what she did. She stuck with them. They built a better family, a better life for them together. And things changed around, and then we see the whole encapsulation of everything that she became at his funeral when she stood up and made that unforgettable speech at his eulogy for him. That's to me, that's Kobe's Mamba mentality permeating his entire family. We know his young daughter had it with the way she played, and his wife had it too, because she showed that in that instance. So his legacy went from hate to love, and it was well deserved. I feel like at this point her legacy is well deserved because she has handled it unimaginably well.
And I mean, I think that incident in Eagle, Colorado, I will mention it only to say he's human. He's human. It made him human. If he didn't think he was human, it made him human. She stuck with him through that for whatever the reason was. We've all been married or married, and nothing's perfect. However, like you said, it's the whole story of a person. And when you look at the whole story of Kobe, coming from a pretty solid family, if you know his background with his sister Sharia and his dad Joe and his other sister and his mom, it got complicated with money like everything else does. But who he was becoming, I think, is the progression of adulthood. That's why the love is there. For me, it was always just because I just loved him, everything about him, his style. We were only a year apart, everything. I loved that. He loved Michael like I did. But before he passed, one of his last interviews, just seeing him give respect to Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson as guys who were kind of outcast in the NBA, and just telling them at the end of the interview, like, I'm proud of y'all. I'm proud of what y'all are doing. Y'all are like big time media players. You never hear that from Michael. Michael doesn't give anybody anything, but to see Kobe be so humble to give people their props while they're there, because he has kids, and maybe his kids made him a better person. I don't know. But he allowed that to happen. So Kobe Bean Bryant will never be forgotten. I truly respect what Vanessa did and what his friends did, Jimmy Kimmel and Shaq and Diana Taurasi and everyone who spoke at his that celebration. And bless his heart, Mike. Mike let his guard down momentarily, and it was a beautiful thing.
Did any of y'all ever know how close they really were? Or believe it if you had heard about it?
Yes, from Kobe's comments over the years, but to the extent, and that story about him asking about the age, or asking about how old were you, and that's he gives that same discussion to Jimmy Kimmel maybe a month before he passes. And he talks about that situation. So I know they're talking all the time, But still, to hear Mike admit it, Mike holds, and because of celebrity, but it changes you, but he holds everything close to the vest. And as he said, Kobe has him on stage with the ugly cry, right? And I think that, as you said, Andre and Aaron, it is a legacy. And that's the kind of legacy I think, regardless of how you feel about him, regardless of the situation that did happen is negative, I respect anyone's feelings about that as well. But for me, imperfect man, that I appreciated what he gave, and entertainer as well as a husband and father. So
yeah, definitely.
that's the episode on Kobe that we have wanted to do, dreaded a little bit, little emotional about it. I appreciate Dre making time. There was some technical difficulties early getting set up. I appreciate you holding out, and
thank you
Aaron
both. I appreciate it
as well. And we look forward to a more uplifting episode in the future. But for this, I think it was due. We definitely are sad for not only Kobe, but everyone who passes and loses someone tragically like that. So thanks for listening to what we're talking about. Appreciate it.